So we're back in the tent, continuing our conversation with Courtney and Touraj. We have another special guest, Andreas Stavropoulos from DFJ. So we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing in a second. Let's continue the conversation with Keep and gaming, and what you guys are doing, and also maybe I told a story about Brian, but maybe you can tell a story about your experience and dealing with Brian. So
yeah, sure. So the story of how Keep came to be actually is I worked at Dig, and I had to interview this young guy who was at the time I think 18, and he was from Canada, so he came down and interviewed. I was kind of helping out. I was an engineer helping out in analytics and things at Dig, and but I also was very involved with the business development team, mainly head up by a guy named Matt Van Horn, who's at Path, great guy, and he really liked this young energetic guy. So he came in, did the interview, really liked him, and so we decided to bring him on. Then shortly thereafter, maybe less than like 4 or 5 months, Dig kind of had some changes. A few people left, and he was one of the people that was let go. So we kept in touch, and I made an iPhone app. It was a game called 7x7.
Yep.
I wanted to give out actually rewards in that app to my friends, mostly that were playing, right, T-shirts or whatever, because I had a lot of friends playing that. And he's like, well, wow, I want to make that as a platform. Like, I've been really thinking about this. Let's sit down and chat. So, although I was working on something else, the similar idea we had, which to me was just a feature, and him as a platform, kind of came to be. And I made a demo, put it in 7x7. Next thing you know, we're talking to True Ventures, and we have a seed round. And I've built a couple companies in the past, and one thing I really felt strong about this one is that we had kind of a three pillars. So before it was mostly just engineering. Didn't have a lot of marketing, didn't have a great amount of design. Other co-founders, Andreas, fantastic designer and user interface developer, and kind of he did the Chipotle iPhone app. It was like the first iPhone app you could do payments with. It was
it's a good app.
Yeah,
it's a really good app. Actually, I use it all the time.
Yeah. So so we had engineering and design, and then like marketing and being able to go out and do all that. So it was like the three pillars to keep up, right? And we're a rewards platform, so I should probably start there. And we provide rewards to now over 1,000 app developers and their users when they accomplish achievements in their app.
Yeah.
So
it's an SDK.
Yep, it's an SDK.
Plugs in. And then basically what happens is I reach a level or goal.
Yeah, people have their moments.
Yeah.
It's like their moments of victory. And then what we do is we reward that moment. So.
And so, what are some of the brands that you guys are working with?
It would be Pepsi, Propel, McDonald's, Sony Music, Disney, be Unilever, Procter & Gamble, many brands.
Okay. Are you both familiar
Amazon.
with Kip? What are your thoughts? What were your thoughts when you first heard about it? And B, so part of this new kind of concept that we're doing is we want to also, I mean, not me, but experts want to give advice. Again, feedback. I know that you've done a bunch of really cool investments. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then maybe some thoughts.
Sure. So my background, I should start by saying, it combines a couple interesting things here. The first one being a computer scientist myself, even though I never was a hacker in the true definition of the word. From an algorithmic perspective and kind of the love of platforms and abstraction layers as a way of getting a lot of value for users in software, it always comes by raising kind of the bar and creating platforms at a higher abstraction layer. So ideas, whether it be rewards platforms or other ways of creating something bigger than just a hits-driven aspect of a single title, are always interesting. That's the one. The second aspect is I'm European. So seeing what we call now post-PC and how big of an aha moment it was for people that grew up in Europe and saw texting and what was happening, frankly, when the US was behind the rest of the world from a network perspective, was something that enabled me coming into DFJ at the time to invest in some of the early mobile infrastructure platform companies like Mobile 365 and others that really rode the wave of messaging and what we now call apps. At the time, it was kind of just new platform for making money through data.
Totally.
So with those two, specifically with you guys, I mean, the types of questions I have for, again, all of the, let's call them transformative platforms, whether they be rewards-based, whether they be discovery, which I see as another big problem. We're big investors in Flurry in the city. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that they do is allowing developers to make money through individual titles by creating a network at the top. So the question is always, can you, by being in the middle, carve out enough of distinct value with easy enough through APIs or otherwise hooks, upstream and downstream for you. So upstream would be the advertisers or whoever that needs to get a message or something across. Downstream might be either the individual developers or other partners that, if you don't own and operate all the titles yourself, if it's third parties you're going to work with, is it easy enough for them to do it? And does it carve enough value for you in the middle so that you don't get disintermediated as your partners get big enough? Because the natural challenge, like with advertising networks or anything else, is if someone's big enough, eventually they believe that all the value lies with them. And people who are in the middle are trying to protect margins for one or another type of functionality, unless they have a true network effect that can keep the users with some identity above and beyond the individual, let's say, publishers. That's the hard part. It's staying independent, big enough, and making it easy enough so that no one wants to get you out.
Well, yeah, I mean, as our network's grown, it's been easier to provide more value to both, actually, the advertisers at the top and the developers. So with that, you obviously you get better targeting. You can provide better analytics to not just on the basic analytics that they might get with whether it be Flurry, whether it be Mixpanel or Google Analytics, but just general through like user retention moments, how rewards are working within their app, and how users are engaging with that. And then, and once you do build up enough network, whether it be, and we kind of now are in 3 different areas, whether it be productivity, fitness, and gaming. And we're building these big channels, and you can definitely provide more value in those channels, and sometimes do cross promotional value between everyone.
And then I'm assuming here, but your conversion rate must be exponentially higher than
And in certain applications, it depends greatly on 2 things. One of which is the application itself, the general use case, like what are you doing, what moment that might be in, and then the brand.
Do you guys curate? I mean, do you give access only to apps that you like or have met some sort of criteria?
Generally applications we're kind of a self-serve model. People can download our SDK, plug it in. But we do give a lot of analytics on what moments are working best, and obviously we try to correct that. So, and we do give feedback, obviously. We have a great business development team that goes in and really learns each application and plays it, and it was like, we recommend best practices here and here. And so conversion rates can vary dramatically. For certain brands, that can be 50%, 60%, and some applications, there's a couple applications now where it's like 45% engagement rate.
Okay,
so which is
next time you're raising around. By the way, I have to say something. This gentleman here has a trifecta from Harvard.
Oh yeah, that's right.
#1 in your class. That's insane.
And I didn't know they had that until I got my money in the mail. You actually get a check.
Are you still paying off your student loans?
No, it's all done.
Done. Okay.
But you do get. There is actually such a thing. I didn't know it existed.
I have to say
at HBS.
I was really impressed. So computer science, bachelor.
CS, bachelor's, master's, and then MBA. A few years later.
Wow. So Harvard.
And then my wife's got the other 2 because she's the medical doctor from Harvard Medical School. So now our kids, as we're coming into middle school.
So you're making donations.
Starting to play the legacy card, thinking about it already. Well, don't tell anyone.
I would think that the first in your class gets you some sort of bonus.
Nah.
I was impressed.
Great.
Trej, so consumer apps, a good friend of ours, Wedding Party. I know you've been helping them.
Yeah, great company.
I used it for my wedding. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
They had a completely different product, micro mobs, which was cool, and they just couldn't get into gear. But then it led to this. What are your thoughts about Keep and this whole rewards and then secondary gaming as a whole right now?
Yeah. I think this is incredible what you guys have done at KIP. I know there are a bunch of companies that have tried to do this, right? And none of them could get the critical kind of traction that you have. And then once the network effect kicks in, then you pretty much have a lock-in because the insights you can provide and all that, it's fantastic now. My only concern, like moving forward, if I was in your shoes, would be, well, how can I maintain my position, right? And what are the natural allies or competitors that will come out of the woodworks and try to threaten my business? So, for instance, maybe bug tracking platforms, right? Or any kind of a thing, right? How do you see that ecosystem, and where do you think the natural kind of threats will come, and how do you go about kind of diffusing them or creating alliances?
Well, so as there are more and more platforms that people use for, and I guess anyone technically could be a credible threat to any platform, right? So Parse, a lot of people are using Parse for their data. They could easily provide analytics for everyone, and like Flurry and then Mixpanel and everyone else is like, oh, what? And same thing, they could provide rewards. One thing that's very difficult on a rewards basis is actually the Salesforce network to go and get that. It was so much harder than I imagined. And I think that is that's one of the footholds, I think, in the education process that we've had to do with all of these people, not just in the United States, but now in Latin America and then Europe. And learning that landscape is something that's very, very difficult to do. Now, it's not to say that companies with a lot of money, and obviously certain platforms like Google, they know advertising. So they could easily probably do something in this space with them. So, but I think for us, it's building up great channels and providing a great user experience. Never selling anything short. Always trying to provide the best, reward for that particular moment for that user at the time. We had when we're starting to go into a certain channel. What was the fitness channel, first channel outside of gaming. And we had all these rewards, and one of the things we were talking about is like, all right, now we're going to have to do specific targeting to certain applications, and we didn't have all that built out yet. And so one of the first times when we launched the fitness channel is someone got a Carl's Jr. reward. Like, great job, you ran 5K, here's a hamburger.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, well, yeah, like we knew this was coming and it's actually here. Like we have to build out these feature sets and make it very, very clear to not only the people setting it up, but then to both the reward provider and the application developer of like what is the ecosystem of rewards in this area.
There's something in there in terms of, well, 2 points. The first one is that timing matters. So sometimes it's not even about, the idea. So there's a lot of the overlay platforms that we're talking about, things like gaming and what have you, that in a pre-iPhone, so to speak, world, who cared, right? Before iPhone and then Android opened up the eyes to this very rich ecosystem and lowered the costs, frankly, for innovators to come into the fray, if you will. So time is low. The second one is, I think what you said is very important and should not get lost, which is people underestimate, especially technical people, underestimate how difficult it is to get the money, to get the brands, to get the people that get it, that have the budget, and to package it up in a way that's easy for them to push the button and push money through the platform. We see it with Glam, in the early days of the web and all the social kind of content their value in the end of the day was not the publishing platform making it easier to show pictures, and it was really about bringing the Estee Lauders and the large folks that would never have a way, even if they wanted to go find these guys individually.
So then do you like stuff like Sponsorfied and SponsorHub, they're partnered now, something like that, they changed the name. So do you like those platforms that are connecting kind of sponsors and brands to, in this case, events and people who have...
so again, the question for me is, again, how can you add enough value that you can defend so that you're not just the marketplace? Because if you're the marketplace, then by definition, big to big will end up circumventing you. They're going to have too much of an incentive to go around you as they get big.
We'll just go medium to medium.
But the thing is, you don't know, right? So you all start small and you get them self-service, and then you want to be so instrumental to their success and not to be, frankly, too greedy, so that they never have an incentive to do the work that it would take to cut you out. And to the extent there's change on the other side, so maybe, Carl Jr. wasn't a good target for the fitness app, but it could be that the next brand that wants to launch vitamin water, 3.0 is there. And if they believe that you're much better at finding the next one.
Vitamin water.
Exactly.
So then you actually have a team like getting brands on board and keeping this content
absolutely.
fresh. So that's also important.
And continuing to grow the network.
Yeah.
Because with anything, whether it be with gaming or fitness apps and productivity apps and these things, they might have their own life cycle, right? As they grow in, like their apps get bigger, they might broaden out into do a variety of things.
Yeah.
Some games have a very, very fast growth and then very fast deprecation. So it's managing all of that with the network too.
And then adding value, right? Adding value. As you said, targeting.
Yeah.
So it's not just, connected to take a cut. It's how do we get and grok what you need, Mr. Brand Manager, to connect across a variety of developer, titles and make it happen. You can protect yourself.
But again, like going back to the conversion thing, like if I was a company and I had 40-50% conversion rate, and that was my ultimate goal because let's call it lead gen or brand loyalty building, then as a brand, I mean, I should be pretty happy that these conversions are happening. And I think that's what I really always liked about the concept. That in that moment, Brian always described it as capturing that emotional moment where you're rewarding someone, and for some reason, I mean, it's right. I mean, it made sense from the first time I heard it, and I really like that.
Yeah, there is a big dopamine effect when you're happy.
Yeah. What's the coolest thing you guys have?
I think so. There's been a variety of cool things. Giving out music and like song pop, different things like that. Or there's been a lot of bigger things where we've done where people have won and accomplished great things and gotten like trips or gotten I think one of the coolest things I actually liked was pop chips. They're a great Silicon Valley. Everyone here has pop chips, but they had a great reward where you got a variety pack actually mailed to you, right? And it was this big box, and it came with a cool package with a handwritten letter from the CEO.
Wow.
And it was like something about like, now your hands won't be greasy when you're smearing your screen or something. Right? It's kind of something funny. But the cool story with that was someone that we're talking to at an agency actually won that reward, and they got it that morning before. And they're just like mind blown that they're playing this game. They got this thing, and then all of a sudden we're sitting in front of them. And it was like, that was totally serendipitous. No. I'm just keep.
I'm saying they were representing a different product.
Oh yeah, they're representing a totally different brand.
That's hilarious.
And you're just like, they really got.
Make it real, yeah.
Yeah, it was real.
That was close.
Yeah, that was just like I didn't have to
sign it.
Yeah. So certain things like that are exciting when you can actually like impact someone's day. And I think it's one of those things of no one really knows what powers these things, but Keep is like we're trying to make it a trustworthy brand. So if you see this reward, you'll know it's trustworthy. We're not going to scam it. You're not going to be any email lists. We don't share this information with the world. We really just use however you get the reward, whether it be through passbook or whether it be through email. We just deliver that to you, and we don't do anything to just break the trust. And what's great about that is that people can actually, they know about us and they'll send us fan mail and do different things like that. Whereas like a general advertiser, no one's emailing Google and being like, I love AdWords.
Right.
Thank you.
And that's the important also differentiation to the point about marketplace. Like people identify you as the intermediary that adds value. Or even as a proxy, it doesn't matter. It means a lot to the consumer.
Speaking of marketplace, obviously Up Council, I know I've dealt with hundreds of startups, and there's this gap between the startup and the lawyers that's somewhat painful. Because it's expensive, and a lot of people don't really understand. Do they need a lawyer? Do they need? So let's talk about marketplaces, because I think what you guys are doing is super cool.
Thank you. Well, I love marketplaces, and I think trust is such a key factor in any marketplace, of course. And now technology has reached a point where actually these kind of different kind of marketplaces can come into being. I mean, you had like something like Odesk or Elance or even Craigslist in a way, kind of laying the foundations of a marketplace, a people economy where goods and services could be exchanged. But now, you can actually match things a lot more dynamically, and why not do that for law? Yeah. So I've been on both sides. I've been a lawyer. I've been also a entrepreneur as well as an investor, and I've seen the pain. All of the parties share the same pain. You know, legal services are hard to find, are very expensive when you do find them, and then there's no transparency. You don't know how good is the result that you got. You know, somebody says, you know, I drafted this document for you for $2,000. Well, yeah, is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? So kind of that's just an ideal situation for a dynamic marketplace where you have user feedback and feedback tied to actual transactions happening and peer reviews and just the network effect and all that. So the more transactions happen through this marketplace, the more people get a sense for what's good quality, who are the good participants in the marketplace, and who are what are the ranges of values that we can expect from it. So for startups or small businesses, I think what we provide could be a great solution at Council. Now, kind of how do you get a marketplace going? I think you build that trust. So we are actually doing a lot of legwork up front by screening who we let into the marketplace as an attorney. Totally. So we kind of play the role of a traditional law firm in that sense, that we hire sort of attorneys to come into that are high quality, that we feel good about the work that they produce on the market. But once you get critical mass, you can kind of let it a little looser, I would say, and let the market dynamics kind of filter out the not so high quality players in there.
But then how do you also avoid the same issue that Andreas was talking about, like people circumventing you? Like, is it just that you're building kind of an option to the big law firms that are, you know, again, may not even take you as a client, or you might not have money, but how do you really carve out, like Andreas is saying, that piece where it's continuously upstream and downstream?
Yeah, so I think the interaction on a marketplace like ours starts with somebody wanting to find a service provider. But then we haven't done our job right if as soon as they find that service provider, they kind of do everything off the platform. Yeah. We are providing tools and a platform, really. We call ourselves not a marketplace, but a workplace, where attorneys and clients can actually work together and collaborate. So provide the infrastructure that makes their lives easier and gives transparency into the working relationship. We are at the beginning phases of that, but that would be, I mean, the signal to us that we're not doing our job would be if people take their business off of the, and the more attorneys we see bringing new clients actually onto the platform, which is happening right now, we feel that we're doing something right.
That's cool. Courtney, you brought up a good point about, you know, this marketplace. It's now, you have 3 pillars. You said gaming, fitness, what was the other one?
And productivity.
Productivity. So do you see this list of marketplaces within your company growing as new trends come up? Because for me, like, for example, like Fitbit and
all
absolutely. These things are
well, and I mean, you bring up a good point there. There's some of these as technology increases, there's going to be more and more like devices that aren't really just app-based, right? But they're triggering moments. You know, you use your Fitbit, you get 10,000 steps. That's a great goal. Yeah. But there's not necessarily, yes, you connect it to an app later on, but things are happening and kind of in the background all the time. Totally. Like, you know, you decrease energy because of your Nest device in your house, you know, for the 3rd month in a row. You use less
PG&E
water.
already gives you a
but, you know,
whatever.
But, you know, little things like that,
Totally.
right? And so it's figuring out how to work with all that data. Obviously, they have APIs and different things you can plug into, but just providing the best experience on that, and then being able to notify someone when that happens.
This, by the way, the whole, you know, you asked in the beginning about interesting trends that kind of go beyond one company. This whole movement from pull to push, what I call, you know, pull web, where you're going in with an intent and you got to do work to get something back, versus counting on all these distributed devices that also create distributed context and awareness to push stuff to you. Much harder to do because you know, the false positive kind of potential is there. You can start annoying people with the wrong kind of thing at the wrong time. Yet if you get it right, it can be so powerful because it is such a much more, you know, I still get annoyed that my car doesn't know where I'm going. Why do I have to tell my car where I'm going? I've got a calendar, it's connected, I've got a car that's connected, the address is there, you can look it up. Why do I have to tell my car where I'm going? I shouldn't have to. It's a very simple thing. Coming, all that stuff's coming.
So then, speaking of that kind of, like, what are your thoughts on Google Glass? And is that kind of the first wave of kind of the intermediate kind of that solves this, or what are your thoughts?
Okay, well, just start us off, and then I'd love to hear what you guys think, because I've actually had a chance to play with it and wear it and all that. In some ways, I think they're doing a public service by almost like the government supports R&D, but really pushing the envelope to kind of show an example of what it is that it could look like from a form factor perspective, from a sort of functionality. They're frankly finding what the problems are in terms of scalability and some of these issues of processing context in the background. Will it be this particular instantiation of the device versus something else? I mean, if you look at Google's history so far, they haven't really been great at the hardware manufacturing aspect of this thing. So I don't know that I would bet on this particular way of doing things versus others. But I think the service they're providing and what they're finding out, and what that then allows us to do, for example, as an OS layer type or platform provider for maybe other people's hardware, is very interesting.
Raj, you seem like you have a thought on this.
Well, I haven't actually tried it myself. I've seen the SNL skit, of course, as everyone else has it.
Peacock.
There you go. But I think the trend towards wearable computing, it started actually in I guess late 90s, early 2000s, when I had my first taste of venture capital. I had all this wearable computing, which was embedded computing into your clothing and things like that, which was fun. Coming a lot out of Europe, Germany. I feel like the trend, the direction is right. You want to get computing closer and closer to your body, and ultimately it's going to be embedded in your body, right?
In our lifetime?
Probably. I would think so.
Right.
So I think.
I mean, medical devices, you have it already. They all have microprocessors, right?
Yeah. I think we're gonna have in 10 years time, we're gonna have embedded computing, and I think the closer you get it to you, sure.
Maybe I'm just weird. Like, I wouldn't walk around with it. That's what I'm like.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like, forget the particular.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with his statement about they are doing a big service of making it for the public masses. Like, wearable computing is the next. It's a very important platform. We don't know what it'll look like yet, but let's just try it and see. Yeah,
and it's so core. I mean, if you're thinking about organizing the world's information, right, and you think about core pieces of functionality that all these push-type devices would do, is filtering quickly, helping you discover, helping you filter a lot of things, a lot of different pieces of information, presenting to you in whatever the format is in a quick way. Those kinds of problems, if they, by being an innovator, if they can start thinking about how you solve them at scale, which is what they're good at, whether it's their device or Samsung's device or whoever's device.
So that to me, that was like the practice.
Right.
Yeah.
So and arguably they're winning. I mean, I would say to some degree, yeah. But I think they have some of the things cooking, but that's my opinion. But really quickly, Andreas, so you have DFJ. It's a mega fund. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
what's a mega fund these days?
I don't know, but they're in terms of, I mean, we're in our 10th fund now, so altogether $3.5 billion across, and then another couple billion in affiliated funds. So we were very early believers in the globalization of venture capital, basically following the globalization of entrepreneurship and innovation, right? So we grew not as much within fund size, but more in terms of a platform and a footprint that tried to have lots of different, let's say, tentacles. Mostly not controlled funds. These were loosely coupled sort of affiliates of ours that still, though, allowed us to do things like see what's going on in Israel and what's going on in Vietnam and what's going on in Russia and what's going on in Brazil, and have a funding vehicle that allowed syndication without necessarily getting pushed. That's what we wanted to avoid, getting pushed into these mega funds that, I don't care what they say, invariably they have to do bigger deals and write bigger checks to justify the overhead and everything else. So we feel that from a venture capital perspective, we want to be true to what we know, which is seed and early stage. And now we have a separate growth stage fund that's doing very well. They were in Yammer and Solar City with us and a bunch of other things. But both of them small. When I say small, 300 to 400 million type range, not $1 billion or anything like that.
What are you seeing? Earlier we were talking about kind of the trends. Seed is the new A. You know, what are some of the deals that you've done recently or you're looking at? Like, what I personally think, you know, Angel List and, you know, the growth of the Angel Network here has completely changed the dynamic of the funding ecosystem, which that's actually the missing link in the Middle East. There are high net worth individuals who have money, play money. They have a guy in London saying, okay, you can play, this is play money, here's 1% of your portfolio, do something. It's having a startup investment is like having a sailboat now, but it's not a solid angel network or early stage investors who are sophisticated and bringing value. But what are your thoughts as far as the trends of funding sizes and the A-round crunch or whatever they call it?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting phenomenon. You just see it's like pushing a bubble, an air bubble in a how do you call it, in a wallpaper, right? So you've got shortage of funds in one stage of the cycle, and it used to be that the B round was the dead man's round, because when you couldn't count on an exit happening anytime soon before the IPO market opened up again, as it has the last couple of years, it used to be that, A was no problem, people could actually make good, even get revenue, but then no one had an incentive to jump in for what, let's call it, the traditional B round, because the time between that and exit was so long that it almost felt like yet another A2. That got solved as the IPOs and the multiples got better, so now you've got a lot of angel activity, so all of a sudden you have an A-round crunch, primarily driven by the fact that you got these mega funds. There's a have and have-nots in the venture capital world. There's a few funds that, if anything, have been getting larger, but a lot of the venture funds, the traditional sort of $100 to $300 million type funds, are going away. So you either have angel or super angel networks or super angel funds, and then you got bigger ones, and the in-between just becomes yet another filtering mechanism. So for me, I guess if I think about it long term, the fundamental need, to the extent that a company is going to be a truly big company, somewhere along the way, they need to typically get help. And when I say help, I don't mean just hire more engineers and figure everything out, but help in terms of doing the things that exactly for them to be successful, they should not be worrying about doing. For example, looking at other trends, looking at completely unrelated spaces that could become interesting to them, yet they're too far out for any entrepreneur that's worth their salt to be spending any time. Thinking about financial structuring of M&A or acquiring other companies, the types of skills that you don't organically typically worry about within a startup. To the extent you're going to need those skills somewhere along the way, there's a case to be made about professional investors that come in and focus on you, and you're not one of 300 things they're doing, but you're one of a few, and you share the risk and you share the reward with them.
Cool. So, of the companies you've invested in, what's your favorite?
Oh, no, that's like picking. That's like picking a kid, you know.
No, like,
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I'll give you a couple for different reasons. When I think about companies that I've been involved with a very long time, and see even today, I'm excited about what they're doing for the world, and let's separate that from when IPO is happening and what have you, and what companies like Meetup, right? What we're doing now, and you think about the power of these platforms, and especially now with mobile phones, to discover even things around you that don't just create postings and likes, but actually try to get people out of their zone of comfort and experimenting and finding the others. And the more esoteric your interest is, and the hardest it would have been in the pre-connected world to find the others, imagine how much value a platform like that has. I see how transformative it is in people's everyday lives. So, and every time we go back and have a board meeting, we have organizers come in and talk about whatever meetup it is they're leading, and you hear their stories, and you're amazed about how many sort of people's lives they're touching and how real it is and all that.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because that was my favorite out of your portfolio. And partially, when was it, like 4 months ago, I'm in Beirut, and there's a meetup.
Yes.
And literally, there was 40 countries represented, like
right.
Random people, and like nobody had really anything in common, but they're all traveling, and I met a bunch of people from Germany and the US, and I can tell you, like, I don't know if you know this, but I don't have Facebook. Like, I don't believe that that's how relationships are built. Relationships that you have should be built. But I can tell you, I've been to a bunch of meetups or meetup-like events where these relationships happen, and I have to say that was my favorite. But and I wasn't trying to get you to pick, but I'm saying, like,
no, but here's an example of one where you're saying, look, this is something really transformative. Now the company's been doing fine, revenue, been profitable and all that, but maybe exactly because they're not Facebook in terms of all these impressions, because most of this authentic stuff actually happens offline in a way that's harder to do things like targeting and all that. It's not a $1 billion company, right? So you then say, well, what about some of these other companies, like we were talking before about Yodel or others, that are really growing fantastically and are bona fide IPO candidates short term? Sure, I'm very excited about them too, for different reasons.
Yeah, of course.
And then, of course, you got the really young ones. You're always, I'd say in VCs, people are the most excited about their latest investment.
baby. Yeah.
Always,
Baby, that's
right? So
So Courtney, just on that spirit, what's the furthest thing you can throw out where you guys can see yourself in like a few years being integrated?
Since we want to basically own every rewardable moment, it would say something totally random. Your 20th Tesla supercharger fill up, something like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Something
See?
like that.
I'm telling you, by the time we're done here, Andreas is going to write you the next round.
I like that. I've had a Tesla since December, right? So it's like, hey, when am I getting mine?
Well, it's funny because if you really think about it, because as we're talking, I was like, okay, gaming, fitness, and productivity, but productivity, in a sense, could really mean anything. You know what I mean?
Oh, it is. I mean, take any. It's the everyday moments. We're not talking about
exactly.
the one-offs that are very, very important in your life, like marriages or births or whatever. But it's like, I finally, I finished my triathlon. Just training up to the triathlon, though, could be rewarded, and that's what we're trying to do.
50th meetup.
Sure, absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Anything. Retrofit is a company we invest in, which I never would have thought we would have done because it's in the weight loss kind of space. Speaking of fitness, it's called the Retrofit. They're in Chicago, retrofitme.com.
Yep.
You didn't know them from before. I've lost 25 pounds on that thing. It really works. Now, I'm looking at that, not touching it.
Please.
But I mean, you get the little moments that happens authentically through your interaction with these experts. It would be great to also have something unexpected that hits you at the right time.
Okay, so this is what the spirit is: business development and relationship building. So I want to see an announcement.
We got it.
Meetup,
All right, there we go.
That's right.
We can do that.
And send your portfolio companies to cancel.
Yeah, seriously. So anyway, but Courtney, I think you have to get going.
Yeah,
thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Say
really,
what's up to
really
Brian.
Appreciate it.
I'm a big fan of Brian. I just think he's kind of he's a true soldier, like of the.
Oh, he's great.
This is the follow-up.
And so I mentioned the Middle Eastern Accelerator that we're trying to put together. So if you can spare a couple hours in October,
absolutely.
I'd love to have you as a mentor join us and spread the good word with you.
Yeah, and if I don't know if you put up any information, but if anyone has questions, just hit me up.
Awesome.
So love to say hi to you out there.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, Courtney.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Really
Cheers.
appreciate it.